Today on More in Common, we're highlighting buildOn, a nonprofit organization building schools around the world, often one brick at a time. American students digging new foundations with local residents in some of the most impoverished parts of our planet. While continuing to create schools in developing countries, buildOn recently embarked on a multi-million-dollar initiative in the New York Bronx to further expand its services here in the U.S. Founder Jim Ziolkowski remembers how he first conceived of buildOn during a post-college road trip in 1989. Most people, when they travel, they're kind of focused on their own lifestyle. When you traveled as a young person, you saw something different and decided to do something about it. Talk about those early journeys.
The first country I went to, developing country, was India. And I was completely overwhelmed by extreme poverty, by the injustice, by the suffering. I'd never seen anything like that. Nepal's, the poverty index is even worse. I couldn't shake it, this feeling. I passed through this village and they were celebrating the opening of a school that they built. And it's monsoon, so it's raining buckets and they're dancing in the mud. They never went home. So instead of seeing the injustice and the suffering of extreme poverty, I'm seeing the joy, the ignition, the solidarity around education.
Returning to the U.S., Jim founded buildOn with a dual mission to uplift marginalized youth in America and to eradicate educational barriers in remote corners of the globe. Since its inception, buildOn's impact has been felt by over 300,000 children and adults who've attended over 2,600 schools. They offer not just access to education, but also foster a spirit of service and community engagement. Trying to do 3 schools, thinking you might fail on the very first, having over 2,500 schools around the world that you've helped to build and a real impact in the United States as well. Talk about the highlight of your career.
Going back to the first school we built in Africa 20 years later. I mean, that was just a powerful, emotional, deeply spiritual experience. We got the school built. When I left the village, there were 120 kids going to school. Instead of 1 school and 150 kids, there's 5 schools and 1,000 kids going to school every day. They did that without us. We had nothing to do with the other 4.
Beyond igniting a passion for education overseas, buildOn inspires students in the U.S. to pursue lives of public service. While growing up in Chicago, Othello Herbert faced criminal charges before he charted a new path with volunteer opportunities from buildOn. Amazing photo of you passing concrete in Malawi, and there's this moment, everyone's kind of working together to build a school, and it seems a world away, and yet I want to hear about kind of your journey into buildOn and then to these distant places in the world.
I grew up in a group home ran by Carmelites, so it's a program that houses 160 youth. I was 16. I had caught a UUW, which is unlawful use of weapons. It was 2 gun cases that I caught, and the judge allowed me to stay on home monitoring, which is house arrest. And I would do a year's worth of probation. So I started looking for mentors, people who could kind of take me out of the street life.
And buildOn has helped you see the world in a different way, and now you're committed to helping the world in your career.
I would say buildOn placed 3 monumental principles in my life. The first being cultural adaptability, which is having a sense of cultural awareness when I'm abroad and domestic. The second would be nobility and civility, which is being able to almost be grounded with everyone that I engage with, whether it's here in the Bronx, in Manhattan, or back home in Chicago. And lastly, it's leadership.
As buildOn seeks to expand its impact here in the U.S., Jim received support from one of his most vocal champions, New York City Schools Chancellor David Banks. I caught up with the Chancellor on a Zoom call about buildOn's efforts to engage youth in over 50 Bronx schools by 2027.
Since I became Chancellor, Jim and I reconnected, and he shared his desire to expand the work, particularly in the Bronx, which has the highest per capita, poverty rates in the nation. And he shared with me his vision for going from 10 schools to 50 schools in the Bronx. That means thousands of kids would have an opportunity to be exposed to buildOn. And it's going to make a huge difference, and I'm here for it.
A lot of people think of school, hey, this is an academic or rigorous, environment where we're trying to expose kids to various lessons. How is volunteering becoming an important part of that mission here?
At the end of the day, when kids go to school, we need them to ultimately understand that school has a purpose. And a huge part of that purpose is about how you take the skills that you've developed and the knowledge that you have gained so that you can go out and, in fact, make the world a better place. Not just use it to say, how can I make more money for myself? That's fine. But to know that you should have a responsibility to the broader society. And I think kids that are part of this program understand that intuitively because they are engaged in these community service projects.
And when it comes to the transformative power of community service, look no further than Michael Taveras. He immigrated from the Dominican Republic at age 14 and discovered buildOn offered him the chance to give back to his new neighborhood in the Bronx, where he completed more than 250 hours of community service while juggling schoolwork and multiple jobs.
I was living with my dad and my stepmom here in the South Bronx. Coming here, doing service with the kids and playing with them after school was definitely a different environment from what I used to.
Talk about the importance of building a school in a distant part of the world when there's so much going on here in the Bronx.
It is a humbling experience because of the schools we built. Now they're getting a better education. Now they don't have to walk hundreds of miles to get to a school. You've seen the impact that you're truly making, not only for the kids, but for future generations.
And you also connected with this guy to your right. Talk about kind of that connection.
Well, connecting with Jim definitely changed my life. I think back of all those times that I was going through hardships. He would always check in on me when I was on the ground. I always call him and say just thank you.